Hi, welcome to episode 9 of Science Literacy. My name is Andy Epton, and today I'm going to be talking about mortality rates of disease. Woo, fun topic, right? But seriously, there's been a lot of misinformation out floating around the internet, as usual, about this very topic. So if you hear any little crunching in the background, that's my rabbit. She's got a little treat, and she decided just now to start eating. You can see the top of her cage there in the lower right-hand corner. Anyway, mortality rate. What does it mean? What is it? Um, is the information floating around the internet about the COVID-19 mortality rate correct? Um, I'm going to try to answer all of these and more in this particular episode. So to get started, um, the reason behind this particular episode, there's a meme I've seen floating around the social media platforms, particularly Facebook, that claims that the mortality rate of COVID-19 is only 0.04%, which means you have a 99.96% chance of surviving. This is misleading. And it never seemed right to me. It always caught me off. It caught me um, kind of questioning the the accuracy or the veracity of it. And so I kept seeing it. I saw it back, last month. I think I saw it as recently as today, actually. In fact, I saw a meme that um, inaccurately claimed it was from the CDC, where they listed all these statistics, and at the very, very bottom, they had a statistic of 0.04% under the heading chances of you dying from COVID-19. Again, 0.04%. So obviously, um, that's bizarre just flat out bizarre on the surface of it. So I looked into it again. I don't research. I really, really am kind of sick and tired of that term, because usually now it's thrown around almost as a bludgeon. I did my research, so X. No, I didn't do research. I just did a simple search engine search, simple Google search. Used a little bit of common sense, a little bit of mathematical prowess, and basically figured things out. So what does 0.04% refer to? What they're doing is they're taking the total number of deaths, in this particular case for the United States. The total number of deaths is somewhere around 164,000 people so far during this pandemic, have succumbed to COVID-19, the disease caused by SARS-CoV-2, aka the coronavirus. An absurdly high number. I mean, just ridiculously high, um, for supposedly one of the best countries in the world. Um, but again, um, they took the number of deaths, again, about 164,000, and they divided it by the total population of the United States. They used a population of 331 million. The United States is around 329 million, but you know, either way, it comes out to be about 0.04%. So I question the chances of you dying from COVID-19, 0.04%. That just never seemed right to me, because my chances of dying from COVID-19 are ridiculously low right now because I don't have it. So I always thought that the fatality rate of a disease was the um, case or deaths by case fatality rate, and in that case, the fatality rate of COVID-19 is between 3 and 4%. If you take the total number of cases in America at 5.1 million approximately, and you take your number of deaths, 164,000, divide by 5.1 million, you get about somewhere between 3 and 4%. That is significantly larger, 100 times larger than the fatality rate put out there by the anti-mask crowd and the people who claim that this is all some sort of conspiracy or hoax or whatever. 0.04% compared to 4%. So, which is right? Well, technically, they're both right. Um, According to the CDC, again, I just did a simple search. How are fatality rates determined? There's a whole list of different ways of determining fatality rates. You can go by cause. You can go by age. You can be very specific or very broad. Obviously, the broader you are, the lower the number, because again, you're dividing into or you're dividing by either again 5 million or 329 million. Obviously that's going to have a huge difference and make a huge impact on your final tally. So the 0.4% or sorry 0.04% which is thrown out there is misleading at best, because either way, either a 4% fatality rate or a 0.04% fatality rate gives you 164,000 people dying of COVID-19 in America alone. So using the 0.04%, it's a misleading statistic because it implies that not many people will die. What they don't tell you in their statistic is that they are looking at the total population of the country. So anybody that is in the country, or an American in the country, they have a 0.04% chance of dying by COVID-19. Obviously, your chances are increased if you fall into certain categories, like you have the disease, or you are of a certain age, or you have certain underlying conditions like COPD, or suffer from pneumonia or bronchitis already. Things like that put you at a higher risk. So statistically, it all boils down to one of these numbers. So again, which one is correct? Technically, again, they're both correct. However, these same people that are arguing that it's at 0.04% and yet claiming that it's the flu because the flu has a low mortality rate, they're comparing literally apples and oranges here, because the rate that they're using for the flu is the CDC mortality rate by cases of 0.1% versus the CDC by cases of COVID-19 at, again, about 4%. 4% compared to 0.1% is 40 times higher. So either COVID-19 is 40 times more deadly than the flu, which flies in the face of the sorry, my brain just went blank. The agenda that they're trying to put out there, or they use one statistic, 0.04%, and another statistic, 0.1%, based on whatever fits their agenda. So they're using the by case, death by case mortality rate for flu, and the case by population mortality rate for COVID-19. And they're saying, hey, look, they're both really low. In fact, COVID-19 is far lower than flu, so the flu is deadlier. So these are not comparable. You cannot compare these two numbers. So I looked at it and I wondered, what would be if we decided to use this particular mindset, or this particular way of looking at the diseases? What would be the fatality rate of certain diseases that we know are really bad? Again, I worked I taught in Virginia for 8 years. And one of the years I taught there was right in the middle of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. And I remember my students freaking out about it because there was a case in, I think it was Dallas, um, Dallas or Austin, Texas. And they were freaking out in Virginia about Ebola being in America. They were actually stressed out and concerned for their lives that Ebola was in America. So let's look at Ebola. Ebola, according to, again, CDC statistics, WHO statistics, has a mortality rate of about 83 to 90%, which means if you have Ebola, you are very likely to die. Very few people survive it. Um, and there are different strains of Ebola. Ebola is actually the disease, or there's actually the Ebola disease, where there are different strains of virus that cause the disease. So I'm kind of lumping them all together here, because this is not the area or the time and place to break it all down. If you have questions or curiosities about it, David Quammen did an amazing breakdown of it in his book, Spillover. I've also heard some amazing details about Ebola in the book Inferno by Dr. Stephen Hatch. So, again, highly recommend these books if you're curious about Ebola, or at least the differences in it. Those are two starting places. So, I took a look and decided, okay, the book Inferno by Stephen Hatch took place in Liberia during the outbreak in West Africa, because Liberia's in West Africa, in 2014. So I wondered, based on Ebola's sorry, fatality rate, what would it be if we used the anti-mass crowd logic? So again, number of deaths by total population. According to that metric, sorry, I have to pull it up here. I did just a quick calculation a little while ago. Um, the total number of deaths in Liberia alone were 4,810. So 4,810 people died of Ebola. That's tragic. It was all over the news. People were scared. Now, that's just one country. There were also Sierra Leone and Guinea and a few other places where Ebola was basically just spreading like wildfire. Uh, but I wanted to focus on Liberia because I knew I could get the statistics for a population figure for one country easily. I didn't want to add up all the countries and all that sort of stuff. So Liberia had a population in 2014 of 4,360,000. So 4,810 people died out of 4,360,000. What does that mean? That gives us a fatality rate by population of 0.1%. So 0.1%. So when we talk about Ebola being deadly, what's a scarier metric? What's going to cause you to be more afraid of it? A 0.1% fatality rate or a 90% fatality rate? Obviously the 90% fatality rate. And I'm not saying that the 3%, 4% fatality rate for COVID-19 is to be scary and to make everybody, fear for their lives. That's not the purpose of it. It's to give you a more accurate measure of the fatality or the lethality of this particular disease. Whereas the 0.04% metric by population is a way to water it down using the population of the third most populous country in the entire world. It goes China, India, United States. So we're the third most populous country in the world at about 329, 330 million people. 165,000 people dead out of 329 million does not seem like a lot, especially when you use 0.04%. It's 0.04% of the population has died based on this particular disease, which means 99.96% of the people are alive. Um, but again, it's misleading. So looking at the fatality by case, the death by case ratio, or the death by case rate, we find that COVID-19 has a mortality rate or fatality rate of, again, 3 to 4% so far. Remember, these numbers are going to keep going up because the number of cases are going to keep increasing, not because we're testing more, contrary to certain people's beliefs, but because it's out there, whether you test for it or not, it's out there. So better testing is going to help us find these people, not uncover or create new cases. It helps us, again, find them. But also the death numbers are going to keep increasing until we get this thing under control. I mean, seriously, this thing is not under control here. Several countries are starting to see spikes again. I read that New Zealand, even though they hadn't seen cases in over I think 100 days, started seeing cases again because they kind of got a little complacent. And even though it was raging all over the place around the world, in their little country, it seemed to be completely, you know, under wraps, but it wasn't. This is a virus. This is a disease. And it only takes one, really. It only takes one person to become infected and spread it around. We saw that with SARS. We saw that with Ebola. We see that all the time with any disease. So, this isn't going away. It hasn't gone away yet. We don't have any cure for it. We don't have any treatment for it. There are a few drugs that we have tested and are using to kind of help mitigate some of the symptoms, and possibly help people feel better, while being in, while basically being treated or quarantined with this disease. Some people get better. Some people don't. Most of the time, people do get better. Again, 4% fatality means 96% survive, but that's still 4%. People play the lottery with worse odds and expect to get rich quick. People go to casinos with worse odds and expect to get rich quick. But with a disease that can kill you, 4% suddenly becomes, that's not that bad. It's bad. Again, the flu, for which we have a vaccine, and various medicinal treatments for, still kills about 0.1% of the population that get it every year. That's on average. That's a lot of people, thousands of people, because thousands will get it, and 0.1% of thousands can be thousands, depending on the numbers and all that. At least in the high hundreds. So this disease is bad. Don't let people fool you into thinking that because only 0.04% of the population have died, that it's nothing to worry about. Remember, that's out of 329 million people. 0.04% is still a pretty big deal. And it's still a pretty high number. And it's something that we should not be complacent about. It's not something we should just ignore and get on with our lives, because some people aren't getting on with their lives. Some people are losing their lives. And if that means it's 0.04% of the population that's losing their lives, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people with families. That's a lot of people who have somebody who cares for them. And this isn't stopping. It's not stopping. Schools started back in a lot of locations around the country, and we're starting to see the folly of pretending like we can just put hundreds of people into a small enclosure and hope for the best. One of my favorite movies is Deepwater Horizon. Love that movie. Fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, very underrated. Stars Mark Wahlberg and John Malkovich. and Kurt Russell. It's absolutely fantastic about the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010. But one of the scenes has Mark Wahlberg's character talking with John Malkovich's character, and John Malkovich works for BP. His character works for BP, and Mark Wahlberg's character works on the oil rig. And um, Mark tells John, hope ain't a strategy. You don't do something and hope for the best and pretend like that's a plan. You got to know what you're doing. You got to have things in place. You got to have mitigation strategies in case things start to go south. You don't just hope. Hope ain't a strategy. And that's essentially what these school districts were doing. They were hoping that this was all blown out of proportion. It's not. Tell that to the families of 164,000 people or 165,000. I'm not keeping up with the statistics as closely as I used to be because the numbers are obscene. They're so high and they keep getting added to by, I think we add almost 1,000 or so a day. So it's ridiculously high. Um, you don't hope for the best. There was a school district in Georgia, and one of the first ones that opened up, and there were pictures taken showing students just crammed into the hallways like school usually is, and very few of the students were wearing masks, and some of the students took pictures and posted them on social media. Those students got suspended because they were putting the school in a bad light. No, they were showing what was going on at that school. That school district has since closed down because of too many cases of COVID-19 in both the staff and the student body. So this isn't going away. You can't pretend like it's not happening. Your ideology does not matter against a viral outbreak. This is not a case of if I don't know, ignorance is bliss. No, no, it's not. You may be blissfully unaware, but you may also be contagious or infected or dying. You don't know if unless you find out. Um, again, it's unbelievable that this is the world we live in right now. That our country, once the shining star of the world, if you will, you know, most prosperous, richest, most powerful, has been done in by a microscopic virus that the other countries of the world have, for better or for worse, contained for the most part. Um, we took the lead and we ran with it. No other country is close to what we're doing, both in deaths and in cases. No other country. And it's a sad testament to leadership and ignorance of science. Wear your mask. I say this every episode, it seems like. Wear your masks. Okay, you don't have the right to impinge upon or hinder somebody else's health and well-being. Everybody has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but that first one, life, that's critical here. A right to live. If you're sick and you're not wearing a mask, you're spreading. You're spreading a disease that could kill. 4% of the people who catch it die so far. I mean, this is a somber reminder. Please wear your mask. So the episode started off discussing mortality rates. Just for just for fun, let's look at a few of the other mortality rates of other diseases just to see how things compare. Again, flu, which is constantly being compared, usually being argued as worse than COVID-19. I mentioned has a fatality rate of 0.1%. And again, this is by case, not by population. So by case, The people who get it, 0.1% of the people who get it, um, die. So, okay. Um, Rabies, if left untreated, is almost guaranteed fatal. I mean, pretty much everybody who gets rabies, if untreated, dies. Rabies is a incredibly fatal disease. Um, but thankfully, it's not airborne yet. It may never go airborne. Let's hope it never does. Because again, left untreated, 100% of people who catch rabies die if left untreated. Um, and again, I say that left untreated, COVID-19 is untreated. It's untreatable. We don't have a treatment for it, at least not yet. Speaking of, sorry, tangent, ADD brain. I actually do have ADD, so it's legitimate. Russia has announced that they are going ahead and they have created a COVID-19 vaccine, and they're going to go ahead and start basically um, giving it to its populace. This is a very bad idea. Not because vaccines are bad, not because, again, this is part of some sort of conspiracy to keep everybody under control or whatever. It's bad because it's not tested. Vaccines are not created in a matter of months and then immediately on the market. It takes time to test. Why? Why? Because if there's some sort of problem with them, we want to know before we start injecting people with a medicine that could potentially cause more problems than it solves. Have you ever seen those ads for medicines? You know, side effects include all these horrible things. No thanks. I think I'll stick to my itchy, watery eyes. Thank you very much. Or itchy, dry eyes. I don't need oily discharge to have nice eyes. Sorry, I will deal with the itchy, dry eyes. Thank you very much. Um, that's why we need to know what are the side effects. But by pushing this vaccine out quickly, the medical community at large is very, very worried because this could end very badly for vaccines in general. Because if things go south, and there is a good chance that it will go south, people aren't going to trust vaccines. Already, we have a massive anti-vaccine movement in our country and around the world. Actually, it's bad enough to get people to, get their flu shot every year. I mean, educated people working in schools. I actually had a colleague this past year tell their students not to get the flu vaccine because it'll give you the flu. Wrong, 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 wrong. It won't give you the flu. But people think this. And so they're telling people, again, people in influence are telling others that are influenced by them not to get these vaccines because it might cause these other issues. No. So if Russia goes through with this vaccine program and it goes bad, this could be irreparable for the vaccine community, for vaccines in general. Could be completely irreparable. So in this case, hope is our strategy. There's nothing we can do about it. We just have to sit and watch and hope for the best. It's still not good. It's not good science. It's not good medicine. This is. I honestly don't know what this is, what they're doing. So, again, that's side note on that. Back to our mortality rates. I'm gonna do a few here just to kind of finish things up, then kind of recap because again, I try to keep these around 30 minutes, just make them watchable. I don't want to drone on and on and on and on and on, even though I tend to do that. But I do want to make these watchable. So again, smallpox, or sorry, rabies, 100% fatal. Smallpox, virtually 100%, it's around 95% or so untreated. It's eradicated around the world because of vaccines. So vaccines work. Yay, vaccines. I don't have polio. I don't have smallpox. Thanks, vaccines. That type of thing. But prior to the vaccine, it was a virtual death sentence to get smallpox. I already talked about Ebola. AIDS, HIV. We do have amazing drugs now that can kind of hold these things in check. But HIV was, prior to that, pretty much a death sentence. I remember growing up in the 80s and 90s, and it was one of those things where, some celebrity announced they had HIV. It was virtually like, well, we'll never see that person again. I mean, it's sad. It's a terrible thought, but it really was that fatal. Not so much anymore. We are holding it in check thanks to various cocktails of drugs and pharmaceuticals that seem to do pretty well, seem to be doing just exactly what we hoped they were doing or wanted them to do. A few others. Bubonic plague varies widely, 5 to 60%, according to various statistics I found. 5 to 60%. Why so wide? Because bubonic plague is one of those things where it pops up periodically. It's a bacterium carried by rats and squirrels actually. There was a plague outbreak in, I think, Colorado just a few months ago, and people are like, really, plague squirrels, are you serious? Yeah, actually, it's a thing. Pandemic Century, the book that I kind of promoted a few episodes ago, talks about ground squirrels and um, rats in the 1920s in and around LA, um, and other parts of California carrying the plague. So yeah, yeah, it pops up. At its height, obviously, uh, in the 1300s, 1400s, it killed a lot of people, an incredibly large number of people. So it was very fatal. So that's why we have those wide-ranging statistics, because things have gotten better, but still, it's something to be worried about. I mean, people are worried about the plague, obviously. At a 5% fatality rate, that's still worrisome. Very worrisome. It's something that you should definitely be worried about. And again, COVID-19 is almost as bad. So just be aware of all that. So anyway, fatality rate, mortality rate. Be careful what people say about it. Be careful how it's presented. Keep an eye out for that. If it's 0.04%, make your ask yourself: is this are they talking about out of the total number of cases or total population? Because if they're talking about total population, a lot of these deadly diseases are going to have very low mortality rates because not everybody's going to catch it. Okay, not a 60% mortality rate for, say, bubonic plague. If that were by population, we're talking 60% of the entire population of the US would be dead. That's absurd and almost inconceivable. That's what we're talking about if we look at by population, but we're not. We're looking at by case. Not everybody's going to get it, and not everybody's going to die from it. But remember, people are dying. Large numbers of people are dying. And so 3 to 4% fatality rate for COVID-19 as of right now in our country alone. It's something to be worried about. So wear your mask, social distance, take those precautions. Please don't pretend like these things are fine. Everything's normal. I don't need to worry. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So, all right. That's it for me today. Next episode is going to be another trip to the library. I'm going to do about every 5 episodes a trip to the library because I really love books and I love talking about the books that I've read, because, well, that's how I get my information, essentially. So, next episode 10 coming up. It's going to be another trip to the library. Don't know what the theme is yet, but figure it out before then. So, that's it for this episode. Bye.